Moving on to long ball number 3 here for Friday, April 4th. Johnny's back. Johnny Infantino back in the news for our third headline here today. The Women's World Cup 2031 and 2035 have been awarded in the FIFA Congress in Belgrade. Johnny Infantino made the announcement, which wasn't really publicly discussed as far as I can tell, but United States, the sole bidder for the 2031 edition of the Women's World Cup. So we have the Men's World Cup in 2026, and then interest shouldn't fade as there'll be a continuous build for another World Cup in 2031. Well, how do you feel about all this?
Okay, I'll say that, first of all, just to be specific, this is not awarded yet. This is a fait accompli, but it's not awarded. Basically what it is that USA, Mexico, and I've read that they have talked about with CONCACAF maybe doing some games in Costa Rica and Jamaica to make it more of a CONCACAF event, but of course the United States would carry the largest burden of hosting games. This is a fait accompli because there's no other bidders. So there will be a vote at next year's FIFA Congress, and that will then confirm the United States as the host of the World Cup in 2031. And as you see here on our headline from The Athletic, 2035 will go to the UK. And I believe that's a home nations situation. So England, Wales, Northern Ireland. I don't know about Scotland. I didn't see Scotland mentioned, but there would be a UK World Cup in 2035. And
England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland.
I'm excited for the idea of a Women's World Cup in the United States again. When's the last time we did one? It was
1999, and then in Canada in 2015.
In Canada in 2015, no, but there was one between that because we had the SARS World Cup. Which was the SARS World Cup? The World Cup the United States ended up hosting on short notice because of a SARS outbreak in China. I believe that was the 2003 World Cup, if that's right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
The United States hosted the World Cup because we had 99, and that was obviously the big explosion and the final in L.A. and Brady Chastain and the penalty kick and the sports bra and the most iconic image in American soccer history. Fight me if you disagree. But then we hosted the World Cup again in 2003, but it wasn't one of it. It didn't feel – it was big, don't get me wrong. It's still the World Cup, but that's so long ago now, and with the generation of attention around – and obviously women's soccer on the professional side – started a league. We've had leagues fail since then. This is going to be a completely different level. Not only will it be an expanded World Cup from what we've ever hosted before.
190 teams.
Yeah, just to invite everybody. Not only will it be bigger, obviously, it's going to be at a different point in women's soccer history. So I do think, if I don't love the idea of having to compare here. We're expecting 2026 to be a big boost for men's soccer in America, and it very well could be a big boost for men's soccer in America. I do think the national team on the men's side and where they are is going to be a bit of a drain on attention. When it comes, it'll get attention, but it's just there's a lot of things happening politically with our men's national team, et cetera, and so forth, that don't have us a year out all that excited right now, and that's probably wrong. But with the Women's World Cup, and I imagine the U.S. Women's National Team, when we get to 2031, will still be very much in a position to be a contender, that could be massive. That could be huge. That could be a thing that, again, launches women's soccer into a different stratosphere.
I might be opening a can of worms here, but do you think that we might be here in the bubble of American soccer, be almost taking it for granted that there will be an automatic surge of grassroots attention and participation because of the World Cups? We're assuming that because that happened in the 90s, but the attention is so much more split. There's a whole lot more going on in the world. There's a whole lot more hobbies and activities and pursuits on your telephone that you could do. Like, do you think that we're maybe just assuming that there will be a groundswell, or do you think that no doubt about it?
Okay. It's all relative, right, Robert? Like, it's if you expect it to turn soccer into the top sport in America, no, that's not going to happen, right? It's not going to be a World Cup comes to America 2026, 2031, and then you and I are living in a country where soccer is dominating sports headlines. That ain't happening. We would love for it to. We dream of it, but that's not what it's going to be. But there will be a push forward. There will be more interest. Even if a small fraction of kids either come back to soccer or suddenly become more interested in soccer, even if it elevates casual fans to more ardent fans, that's a win for American soccer, right? Everything is progress. Of course, there is sort of like, oh, this is a letdown because it's not as much progress as we wanted. Oh, TV ratings didn't shoot through the roof, or we didn't suddenly have a league that's spending 20, 30, $50 million on transfers every window. Like maybe that, or the women's game. We didn't get 5 more stadiums built within 5 years, and therefore it's not a success. Like that, it depends on where you put the bar. And I think the bar, it shouldn't be low, but I think that it can be cleared even if it is, a relatively sort of realistic view. I think that's still progress. That's still good.
We got a comment here from Brandon in the chat. If 2026 is going to be a big boost for the men's leagues here, he thinks absolutely NWSL to Caitlin Clark WNBA levels, especially if the women's national team win the tournament. Fair enough comment there. I was also thinking that like having a month of having soccer on the television, just have it almost, because during the World Cup, soccer is mainstream here. It is a big televised product. So just even having that a consistent day on day basis where clips, coverage, and discussion is around the game could well do it. Because I do remember in Women's World Cup 1999, I guess maybe I was a little naive or just at the right age, but when the Women's World Cup 1999 was happening, I didn't really think about like it being a separate entity. It's just like, oh, a huge soccer competition that just happened to be women. And so having that on TV every day, it just seemed like women's soccer was, a mainstream thing that was normal. And I just continued my impression of that for quite some time. And so while maybe I'm being a little bit cynical, I think that could, boost just the general appreciation or thought of what soccer is here if there's a 5 year span where there's these month-long competitions where it is mainstream.
That's the baseline. That just, it's here, it's happening, it's going to demand attention from people who wouldn't otherwise normally pay attention to soccer. Like it would be extremely obstinate for mainstream sports outlets, and think about your Fox, your ESPN, your radio, your television, the debate shows, the things that we think of, major sports influencers. It would be ridiculous and obstinate, and in terms of 2031, almost blatantly sexist if they were just ignoring the tournament happening here. Like it's the biggest women's sporting event on the planet. And we can talk about the WNBA, we can talk about women's college basketball, and those are great things that happen in this country, and those have grown in attention because of superstars like Caitlin Clark and her story. Just in that to a place, by the way, where women's sports should be. I do wonder about the amount of oxygen, right? Like you already talked about split attention, like just how much attention is left to give. And I don't mean just for women's sports, but I mean for
anything.
For another thing, right? So I think I laid out a theory on this show a couple weeks ago where I said it's really tough to imagine in this split attention economy that any sport is going to migrate itself into the mainstream at this point in history, right? At this late stage of where we are with our technology, with our attention, can any sport break in? It's because, we like to do this thing like, where is soccer? Is it a top 5 sport, top 6 sport? You think about MLS specifically. Where does it rank within the NHL, the NBA, baseball, football, all of those things? And I made the argument, like, I don't know, outside of MMA, and really we're talking about one MMA property, I don't know that I can imagine a sport, or I can't think of another sport that has broken in. Like, everything we care about in this country is long-standing, goes back a long time. Now, I know there's like a new soccer league, there's the 7-on-7 stuff that happens in the tournament every year. There are sort of these there's the new women's basketball product that I can't remember the name of it. I'm going to butcher it, so I don't want to get it wrong.
Women's hockey.
Women's hockey is that's a thing on a lower level. Like, yeah, and JB's mentioning women's hockey, the PWHL. So again, those things are growing. But it's all relative, right? It's relative from like zero attention to even a little bit more attention seems like a big jump because percentage-wise it is. Whereas for men's soccer and for soccer in general, breaking into like a group of leagues and competitions and sports that is like always dominating, and that's the NFL, big gap, NBA, bigger gap or some gap, Major League Baseball, another gap, NHL, another gap, maybe Major League Soccer. But then again, MMA and other things are in that conversation now.
Don't forget golf. I mean, golf gets some attention
Yeah,
here.
there's a team golf league now that Josie Althore's invested in. I saw that on LinkedIn. Anyway, all right, let's move on, Rob.
Interesting times. That is our long balls here for Friday morning. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button on Morning Kick Around on YouTube. Follow along on social media at mkickaround. Write us a note on the email morningkickaround@gmail.com. And if you haven't already done so, please share some pocket change or something bigger at coffee.com/morningkickaround. And those who donate get some bonus content there.